Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the West End Imps show. I have no voice today. You can imagine why. If you were at the game yesterday, you'll completely understand. Chris, as you can see, is absolutely distraught. Chris, how are you?
Yeah, good to see you. Good morning.
Yeah, good. Right, let's. I think we're having a few connection issues, but not to issue. Let's talk about the game then. Obviously,
Do we have to?
Couple of changes. Rushworth was installed back into goal. Jordan Wright's not really done anything wrong, but Carl Rushworth is clearly our number one goalkeeper.
Yeah, and I'd imagine it's part of his loan deal is he has to play. So, and I've got no qualms with that. I think Jordan Wright's proven that if he needs to come in, he can, and he'll do a grand job. So, it's important to have two good keepers, isn't it? But Rushworth is the better of the two keepers. So yeah, no surprises for me.
Yeah, more on Rushworth later. First half then, Chris. Wow, I think it would be fair to say that. Well, the first maybe that's a bit of a stretch. The first 25 minutes, I thought we were absolutely electric. Thought we kept the ball really well. Midfield was ticking over, and it was the first goal. Well, both the goals were the same, really, weren't they? A ball down the left, Tasha and Oakley Booth getting forward, which is one of the reasons that Mark Kennedy decided to bring him into the football club. A really good ball across. It was similar to the ball that Diego Dallo played into Bruno Fernandes in the lunchtime kickoff. And there was Super Ted to nod home his second of the season. So, yeah, happy for Ted and a good goal. And at that point, it looked like we was in control, didn't it?
Yeah, first half an hour, 25, 30 minutes, it was outstanding. I thought the goals were great. Amazing what happens when you get balls into the box and you kind of overlap and get your midfielders pulling out into those positions. I thought Oakley Booth, probably his best game or best half an hour, shall we say, for us. I thought he and Rowan were looking really good down the left. I thought Bishop and Ben House were looking really good. They had a good connection on the right. And I just thought, well, we're going to go on because they were awful, Fleetwood. Poorest team I've seen us play this season, up until about 30 minutes or so. And then we just let them back in. But yeah, a couple of really good goals. Really good to see Ted play in another position, as he commented on after the game in his interview. But, he's a great player. And I personally really hope he gets to play his natural position, because I think he can really start to pull the strings. And in my head, I'm hoping he can be the sort of George Grant figure that we had a couple of seasons ago, when he was just unplayable. But yeah, a couple of great goals. Can't say anything more. We should have really gone on and put them to the sword. But then, decisions happened which went against us, which I think we're all pretty clear about. And yeah, it just seemed to completely fall apart.
Yeah, on to that in a minute. Just want to give some credit to Sean Rowan for that ball into the box for the second. Sean Rowan, it's an interesting debate at left back, isn't it? With Jamie Robson, obviously the club paid quite a large fee to acquire him from Dundee United. But Sean Rowan, for me, Chris, and I'm sure you would say the same, is really holding his own in that left back position. Even when he came on, he's played left centre back, which probably isn't his preferred position. Had a bit of a stinker away at Peterborough for the fourth goal, but really been impressive so far this season in the cup games and in the league games. Talking about Teddy Bishop then, we always call for Teddy Bishop to be playing in midfield, but I think Kennedy got it right yesterday, putting him out on the right-hand side, because it shows with the two goals and how the goals came about. With Kennedy with a ball is moved over to the left. Bishop does the very clever thing as a winger, probably using his midfield brain a bit just to step inside, and both finishes were very tidy. I mean, nothing that the goalkeeper could do with either. But yeah, just your thoughts on Sean Rowan since he's come into the team, and then maybe Teddy Bishop on that right is not as bad as maybe we feared it would be.
No, I don't think it's. I wouldn't say it's bad at all. No, it's absolutely not. I think I'll talk quickly about Teddy first, if I may, just because he's on my tip of my tongue. Is like you said, he's got that football brain. When you have that football brain, that intelligence, that understanding, that ability to read the game, you can play any position because you just know what you should be doing in that position. And Teddy's, gifted enough to be one of those types of player that he can play across, 4 or 5 positions. I just would like to see him playing more in the midfield, because I think that's where he's going to offer more creativity. But that's not taken away from his performance yesterday or any of the previous performances where he's had to right back last season quite a lot. He's played out on the left this season. And yeah, he's just a really intelligent player, and he will always pick up those positions, and he'll always make those movements, and he's got that understanding and reading of the game. Sean Rowan, for me, probably I would have called him as my man of the match up until half time even. And then he's obviously gone off later on with a knock. But I thought he's come in and done really well. And I think it was noticeable when he did go off. And as I've said before, and I'll always say, I'm a big fan of Jamie Robson. I think he's a really good left back. But it was noticeable how different we were able to compete aerially when those balls were coming in once Sean had gone off and Jamie was on, because he's not going to win the kind of headers that Sean was doing or put the pressure on the attacking player when trying to win the headers. And that for me was quite noticeable. But I think Sean's slotted in really well. I feel more than happy across the back line. I suppose there'll be a lot of argument about TJ at right back, justifiably so, because he's not been the TJ that we had on loan. I don't know what's gone on, but I still think he's a good right back. But he does need to sort of step up a little bit. I think maybe he needs to have someone challenging him for that position to push him. Whether, I don't know, this is purely speculative, but where there's some sort of complacency that he doesn't have anyone really pushing and putting his position under threat. So, but yeah, I think Sean and Ted are a couple of really good players to have. And, I'm a really big fan of Teddy as well. I think he's got that natural ability and talent.
And we can wax lyrical about Lincoln for 25 minutes, but ultimately there were two teams playing yesterday, as well as the officials. Now, the Fleetwood first goal, I think a lot of our supporters have got issues with. I've watched the highlights back because you've not managed to do so just yet. But Paddy Lane is a yard offside when the ball is played into him. He rounds Carl Rushworth and puts it in. For me, the linesman's got it wrong. It gives Fleetwood a little bit more motivation. It gives them a little bit more, impetus to go and search for that equaliser and drag it out, because they can do. They score late goals, which again we'll come on to later. But the officiating yesterday for that first goal, horrendous.
I think the officiating, full stop, horrendous. First goal. I mean, we're pretty much on the halfway line where we sit, and it looked offside from where we were. Saw a lot of comments on social media that it was clearly offside. But more importantly, I think, was the fact that a lot of people were saying that the lino was just way back from the play, and he just couldn't have called it because he was so far behind the play. Just hugely frustrating, I think if we're going to talk about the officiating, it was awful, but it wasn't something that necessarily, I don't think, contributed to the end result. I think we had opportunities. We just completely stopped playing after we'd gone 2 up. We were our own worst enemy in that end result. But the officials were really, really poor and really inconsistent, poor for both teams. We'll always look at it with our sort of Lincoln City glasses on. And for me, there was a foul on Teddy Bishop towards the end of the first half, or if not even a little bit before then, which could have been a red, but wasn't even given as a free kick. I've not watched back the highlights, so it's hard to kind of remember exactly every step of the live action. But just really, really frustrating. It's the first game that, and we walked out together, and I think we were both just in a really angry, bad mood. Yeah, and part of that was aimed towards the team on my part, and the sort of lack of concentration and resilience in those sort of 9 additional minutes that were added on. But most of it was just at the inconsistency of the officiating. And it's just so disappointing week in, week out that at the level we're at, we're supposed to be the best country in the world, the best leagues in the world, all of that. And it's just really, really disheartening that across the leagues, there's always some controversy about the officiating. And it just leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth, doesn't it? It just makes you feel really sort of fed up and disappointed with what's gone on in the 90 minutes of football.
Yeah, I think Gaz labelled him the worst referee to come to Central Bank for quite some time.
Yeah,
I'm inclined to agree with him. The game then turned pretty nasty. There were yellow cards being dished out left, right, and centre. I think, obviously, like you said, the tackle on Teddy that went unpunished. But towards the second half, and I mentioned it earlier about Carl Rushworth, exceptional again for me, Carl Rushworth, and the way he, some of the saves that he made, it looked like Fleetwood were certain to score. And I think we probably would have lost the game without our goalkeeper, because he was absolutely unbelievable in that second half for me. Chris, I don't know what your thoughts were on Rushy that second half.
Yeah, I thought he had a great game. Couple of times his distribution let him down, I think, but I think it was more a case of we were just trying to get it up the field and go long, and it felt a bit rushed maybe. But yeah, I mean, his attributes are exceptional, and I think we've touched on it a couple of times before. It sticks to him, doesn't it? A lot of keepers, they'd be sort of flapping, pushing, punching, but everything seems to kind of stick to his body. I don't know how he does it. He's a really, really big asset, and I think you're absolutely right. If we'd not had a keeper of his quality, then Fleetwood could easily have had a couple of extra goals.
And the subs that came on then, Charlie Kendall came on. Chris, you have to remind me of who else came on.
Vernon came on.
Charles came on. That's it.
Yeah, and then obviously Robbo came on for Sean, and that was about all we could bring on, wasn't it? Because we were very thin, and it definitely showed in that latter stages of the second half. The subs they were able to make had a huge impact on the game. The subs we made, I thought Vernon did okay. I thought Kendall didn't have a lot to go on. He sort of ran around admirably, but there wasn't much for him to get involved with. So, yeah, I think that was a huge difference, and it will lead us into probably what will be a fairly nail-biting few days before the window closes, because I don't think I'm alone in thinking that we ideally would want at least 2-3 players through the door. I suspect we may end up only getting one, unfortunately.
Yeah, positive news on Danny Mandrew as well, Chris, that he's close for a return. Obviously, there are names that have been linked that you'll see around social media flying around this week. Alex Gilby, Will Osceola, Jack Diamond, etc. Jai Saimi over at Charlton. So it's set to be an exciting week. But Chris, unfortunately, we do have to talk about the goal that led to the equaliser. I've spoke to Nappers since, said it was definitely a foul on Promise Emma Cherry. Was it Regan Paul? I think he was on the floor, wasn't he, when it was given?
Yeah, it didn't look like it to me, but
free kick comes in. Free header, free man. Jed Garner, who's got history of scoring at Central Bank before, and Fleetwood absolutely steal the point that we thought they weren't going to get. But this is the life of a Lincoln City fan, frustrated as hell, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's really disappointing. It's bad enough conceding a goal any time, but in that sort of 93rd minute, and then. You just kind of think, well, that's that, isn't it? Even though there was still 5 minutes odd to play, it didn't see us getting anything from that. And I just think it was a really. I personally, I haven't seen the highlights, so I'm only going on what I felt I saw, but I didn't think it was a foul. But Nappers would have been much closer and on that side of the pitch. So, probably 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Yeah, just how you cannot be marking all your men and not be challenging, and someone just is there, 10 yards out from goal with a free header, a great header, in fairness to him, nothing the keeper could have done about it, but shouldn't be happening, should it? Should be completely switched on, completely focused, defending like we did against Oxford.
Yeah, just disappointing to concede a goal in the 93rd minute. Unsure as to where the referee got 9 minutes from in that second half. I think that gave he was a bit of a lift.
Yeah, I think every time there was a delay, he was showing his watch to the fourth official and to the players to say, because there was a couple of times I think Rushworth went down, and a couple of players, their players were down, our players. There was those sort of little cheeky little dark arts that we love if it's our team doing it and hate it if it's the opposition doing it. But and there was a couple of sort of fairly long injury stoppages, so I thought there'd be about 6. So but it felt a little bit like the ref's just going to play until he gets a decision right.
Yeah, I think Ben tweeted out the 4th official might have just held up until Fleetwood score on his board. But right, we're done being negative because we've got Cambridge to look forward to and a transfer deadline. One point I would like to make just towards the end is it looked like Anthony Scully said goodbye at the end. Could he well be off in the next couple of days? It remains to be seen, but I imagine that gives me a bit of Toffolo vibes against Bolton, where Toff came over and we sang his name and he was off. But any thoughts on Scully's potential departure before we wrap up today?
I'd be very surprised if he's still with us. I hope he is, because he does offer something different. But equally, if there's a club coming in and offering what is, you're reading anywhere between 500 and $750,000 for him, so absolutely take the money. If we get that kind of offer, my fear is that we get to deadline day and we end up like we have over the last few seasons, and it falls through and we're left short. And that's been our kind of Achilles heel over the last sort of couple of seasons, last few seasons maybe. But it's exciting. I love leading into transfer deadline day. It's a great day, and I just hope that, listening to Mark Kennedy after the game yesterday, he says one's very close. It's pretty much done and dusted, but the player was on the bench for whoever it was. I wonder if that's Gilby, although, again...
Wasn't on the bench for Charlton.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people saying Gilby's not coming because he wants to stay down south. So, it's the exciting part of the season for fans is all that kind of gossip and speculation, and is it going to be them? Is it going to be them? And then I just hope it's someone and that it doesn't fall through at the last minute, as was last year with sort of Morgan Whittaker, for example. I think if he'd have come in last season, he'd have had a much bigger impact than he did when he came January. But we will see. It's all good. But Scully, I'm 50-50. I'm happy for him to stay, obviously, but equally, if we're going to get an offer of some really good money, then the word everyone hates is that's the model and the phrase.
Yeah.
So,
keep your eye out on the blog and on the channel. We will be doing a deadline, a transfer window review at the end of the window. So looking to get forward to that. Make sure you keep your eye out on the blog, because Gaz will be posting all the reliable rumours and stuff like that, etc., about incomings and outgoings this week. I think that wraps us up, Chris. We've gone over the time, but it was one hell of a game to talk about. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And we will see you for another West End Imps show next Sunday, hopefully after 3 points at Cambridge. Thank you very much, Chris.
Cheers, mate. Up the Imps.